Chapter 9 from In the Gare of Ekin-Corlo. On a clear, wintry morning, 5 months after the festival, the Gare of Ekin-Corlo, my shameless grandmother, appeared. I had spotted it at dawn, small and black, seated alone by the frozen stream, well apart from the ale's clusters of white. I'll just try to sit back here and relax a little bit. But when I pushed my head back inside our gare to shout the news to my waking father, he hissed at me, forbidding me to approach the grandmother I had not seen since my mother was alive. Her mind is twisted, he said, spitting into the cooking fire. Too many years traveling alone. He snorted, selfish fool, as he bundled into a heavy blue dell, its hood trimmed in the stiff black and gray fur of the wolf. Ekin-Corlo should journey with the tribe, he growled. Then, pointing a finger at me, you don't see a bird flying apart from the flock, do you? Or a marmot tunneling in a direction of its own choosing? Shura, my father's new wife, worked around us silently, not taking sides. Arguing with my father was always a mistake, yet once again that didn't stop me, and so my retort began. But the eagle flies alone. Ekin-Corlo is no eagle, my father shouted, stomping outside with his saddle in his arms. She is but a silly, old woman who has confused her dreams for her travels. Even in the morning's cold, his stubby fingers darted about the braided horsehair fittings, expertly fastening the saddle upon the back of a dozing horse. Hastily, he mounted and kicked the horse into a grunting leap. But I had already decided that I would see my grandmother. I had questions for her, questions that only she could answer. My stubborn anger rose to meet my father's, and in its heat, I shoved my chin forward and whispered at his back, "You can't keep me from seeing her." As if my words had flown to his ears, my father instantly spun his horse and trotted back to my side. Surprised, I stood speechless while my father sat in his saddle thinking. White puffs of vapor rose silently from the horse's glistening nostrils. Then my father spoke, in a voice almost as quiet as a whisper, and just as firm. Ekin-Corlo is your mother's mother, your only grandmother still walking this earth. It is right you should see her, O Yuna, but not alone, for she is different. You must wait until I walk with you. Do you hear me, O Yuna? You are not safe with her alone. His dark eyes held mine, waiting. I nodded slowly, for a sudden uneasiness at the pit of my stomach had chilled my desire to run toward the small gare by the stream, even in my father's company. And so when my father galloped away, I took but one quick glance at that silent gare before ducking inside our own. All that day, I worked at stirring and sewing in silence, though my mind buzzed with questions. My mother had spoken of her own mother, Ekin-Corlo, on a few occasions, and we had seen her even more rarely. But I did know she was a shamaness, and I knew shamans possessed the answer to any question. So what I longed to ask her more than anything else was this: where would I find a swift horse? Anxiously, I waited for my father's return, thrusting my head through the flap of the door after the completion of each task to make sure my grandmother's gare was still there. But by late afternoon, my father had still not left the herds. Shura was away, milking the goats. Both the sun and the temperature were dropping rapidly, and though an icy shiver trickled up and down my back, I could rein in my curiosity no longer. I threw the leather water bag over my shoulder and meandered toward the stream. A thin snow powdered the ground, so the hawks soaring above could see that my tracks snaked behind me in indecision. First toward the stream, then toward the gare, then in a moment of chill fear, curving back toward my father's gare, yet again doubling back toward Ekin-Corlo's. At last I stood within its shadow, cautiously pressing my ear to the felt wall. In that hush that comes at the end of the day, I could almost hear the earth spirits babbling beneath the frozen roof of their watery pathway. Their running chatter mingled with the moaning of the rising afternoon wind, and then other voices, human voices, cackling and singing within the gare, reached my ears. And next, all at once, as if nature had caught me listening, everything was still. Heart trapped, thumping in my throat, I silently turned to tiptoe away. Please don't keep us waiting, O Yuna. A sing-song voice, ripe with power, spoke from within the felt walls. Your tea grows cold. I jumped in my snow tracks, suddenly remembering that my mother had said that Ekin-Corlo could often see without seeing. A different voice then, one high and brittle, like ice splintering across a creek, spoke through the walls. Your tea grows cold. It echoed, then cackling wildly, and your toe grows green. The raucous laughter of ravens spilled from the gare. Words inside my head screamed at me to run back to the safety of my own gare. But how strange this was. Instead, I calmly placed a hand upon the heavy door flap, alive with leaping animals in every color, and pushed it aside. How carefully I lifted my booted foot high over the raised door sill, for to stumble upon it was to step on the neck of the gare's owner, and an instinct deep within me warned me not to offend the inhabitants of this gare. So she didn't step on the doorstep, she stepped over it. It's a bad luck thing. As the door flap whooshed against my back, I fell to the woven wool sheerdicks. Let me see what a sheerdick is. The wool floor mats of the gare. So she fell to the floor, my hands pressing my face, gagged and blinded by thick smoke. Scented with the perfume of some plant unknown to me, the smoke lazily swirled within the round gear like a choking fog. I coughed and coughed. But finally, I was able to take small, gasping breaths, and still cupping my hands over nose and mouth, managed to squint through tear-filled eyes. 2 old women, one of them the white-haired Ekin Corlo, sat facing me on the opposite side of the fire. Both grinned. They were naked from the waist up, they're naked from the waist up. Waist up. Ekin Corlo was laughing at me from behind the small carcass of a weasel-like animal that rested upon her palm. She stroked it with one misshapen finger and even kissed the whiskered lips stretched in their own frozen grin. Held motionless by this strange sight, I didn't at first notice the other old half-naked woman shuffle toward me on her knees with surprising speed. She grabbed my face between leathery hands and screeched with the triumph of a hawk snatching its prey. Ekin Corlo, you forgot to speak of this beauty. Ragged and yellowed fingernails pulled at my braid. Look at this hair. No finer silk has the con. My wrists were ensnared, jerked into the air, and displayed as a prize. And the hands, strong, not too big and not too small. The woman, who stank of blood and urine, buried her face in each of my palms for a moment, murmuring words I couldn't understand. Then, breathing heavily as if she might fall away into a faint, the old woman drew back, marching her gaze along my arm, my shoulder, my neck, and then my face. A rattling gasp escaped her thin body, and she jumped closer. See how the brows curves like the ram's horns above a thin nose? She is a stubborn one. And look at the eyes. Her toothless face pressed into mine, a rotting stench clamping shut my nostrils. Just a glimmer or two of gold, do you see? She asked over her shoulder. With her clawed hands gripping my cheeks, I could only roll my eyes toward my grandmother, to see her shake her head. No. As if all the air had been sucked from her, the woman shrank, then shuffled on her knees back behind the fire. My fingers touched the greasy film left upon my skin, and my stomach flipped over. I felt my heart, like that of a scared rabbit, fluttering weakly and rapidly inside me. Dropping the grinning carcass in her lap, my grandmother suddenly gave the other old woman a shove with both hands. The other woman squealed and shoved back, but after a brief tussle of flailing arms and slapping hands, scrambled aside. Then my grandmother edged over, leaving me the seat of honor facing the door. Both wrinkled faces turned toward me, smiling and nodding eagerly. But, as if frozen to the spot, I could only look around me thinking, what den of danger have I walked into? These women seem a little crazy. My eyes were growing accustomed to the smoke-filled gear, and they widened in amazement at the clutter. You see, my people take pride in living with few things, carrying only those possessions necessary to survive on the steppe. But Ekin Corlo's gear was a jumble with curiosities I could not name. To begin with, the walls were draped with spotted and striped pelts and dark, furry bags of all sizes. I remembered then my mother telling me that Ekin Corlo, traveling alone, had visited lands far beyond those of our people. With only her ox cart and a small goat or two, she had traveled north to a place where she said all was white and people harnessed deer to carts with no wheels. And she had traveled south, where she said a quiet people lived all their lives on boats in the water. She even claimed in crossing a gobi, Gobi, which in the back it tells us is an area of hard soil strewn with gravel and sparse vegetation. So she, well, now I lost where I was. Let's see where the gobi was. You gotta not lose your page when you, okay, there it is. She even claimed in crossing a gobi to have spotted Almas, the legendary fur-covered half-man and half-animal, though I smiled inwardly at such silliness. The hands were still waving at me, urging me to the seat of honor, so choosing the path closer to my grandmother, I forced my unsteady legs around the fire. I felt the piercing eyes of both old women burning through me with each limping step. Sticky with a nervous sweat, I collapsed cross-legged between them and waited. From the corner of my eye, I saw it coming. The greasy hand of my grandmother's companion flashed across me. Leather strips whipped through the air, and I felt my twisted foot burn. At the same instant, blue sparks leaped from the fire, layering another cloud of strange perfume in the smoky air. Screaming, I hunched over, covering my head with my arms. Oud Bal, enough! My grandmother's sharp voice cut through the smoke. All has been tried. We accept the leg. So she was like smacking it, or like hitting it with a whip, right, to see if she could make it better. A streaming bowl of tea was thrust into my lap just below my tucked chin, its hot vapor adding beads of moisture to my already damp brow. Biting my lip and trembling, I timidly tipped my head and looked into my grandmother's face. It was round, and except for a nubbin of a nose, almost flat. The golden skin must have once stretched across her face as smoothly as water upon a still pond, but now the blazing fire highlighted sagging wrinkles that pulled and rippled around her eyes. I saw reflections of the flames dancing in those gray eyes, sparkling with silent laughter. She was smiling, radiating such warmth that my fear began to melt away. "We are pleased you have joined us tonight," Ekin Corlo said. A slight frown in the direction of her companion brought an additional welcome. "Yes, we are pleased," the other woman said hastily. Her eyes, half slitted, still stared at my foot as a cat does a mouse. Straightening, I took the bowl in my hands and bent my head to sip the tea. My nostrils flared, uncertain of the spicy aroma, yet my lips sucked in the warm liquid, the musky taste pleasant to my tongue. "Speak," Ekin Corlo commanded. "This is good tea," I said. Udbal snickered. "No." My grandmother drew herself up tall, leaning forward just slightly and concentrating her gaze upon my eyes. "Speak of the white mare and the festival." I felt my face fall. "Oh," I said, sighing, "I see my father told you." I paused, and when no one spoke, I added, "I made a weak choice." Both women leaned closer. "How is it weak?" they asked in harmony. "Does she kick?" asked one. "Does she bite?" asked the other. "When you place the saddle upon her back, does she lie down and refuse to run?" "We can change that, you know," they concluded in unison. No, I said, "Nothing like that. At least I don't think so." I sighed again. "The truth is, I haven't even saddled her yet because she is lame. She limped all the way home from the festival." Both old women sat back, somehow satisfied. "And why did you," began Ekin Corlo. "Choose a lame horse," finished Udbal. I waited, sipping my tea, letting the fragrant steam tickle my nose. Should I tell them? I wondered. I wanted to tell somebody. I lay awake at nights wanting to tell somebody, but I knew as soon as I did it would be shouted that I was crooked in the head. Then again, my father had already said Ekin Corlo's mind was twisted, so maybe I could risk sharing my secret with these two. "She spoke to me," I said wearily. The two women leaned forward again, eager, but this time remained silent. All I could hear was the fire crackling and my heart thumping. I continued. "I was looking over at the horses brought for sale or trade. I wanted to find a swift one I could train into a champion for next year's long race. When I got near the white mare, I saw she had been kicked by some of the other horses, and I got off to check her leg, and I thought I heard her say, 'Help me away from here.'" Our three voices spoke the words together in an eerie chant. My tea bowl wobbled. My heart doubled its pounding. How did you know?" I stammered, but then I felt foolish, as if I had been led into a trap. My embarrassment blazed into anger. "Well, if you already knew, then why did you let me tell you?" "To see if you knew," said Udbal, her lips making chortling sounds deep into her tea bowl. She began noisily blowing bubbles in the brown liquid until she caught sight of my grandmother's narrowed eyes. Just like a child, she blew one last gurgle into her bowl before cradling it in her lap and falling silent. Apparently satisfied, Ekin Corlo turned her face kindly upon me. "Why does your choosing of this white mare make you sad?" The words spilled from my mouth and my heart. "I wanted to bring home a champion, a horse that would win the most important race next year, and instead I have an old crippled mare that I can barely walk, and I like her, I do, she's so sweet, but I wanted her just once. I wanted to bring good luck to my clan." Then quietly I said, "I wanted to bring good luck to my father. Now I am always bad luck." I saw the two old women stare into each other's eyes for several long breaths. Then, as if they had received a wordless message from Udbal, if she had received a wordless message from Udbal, Ekin Corlo nodded. Slowly she turned her head toward me. "You want to ride the race and win. You to capture good luck and carry it home. But I ask you, Oyuno, my grandchild, do you not see both good luck and bad luck around you always? Can you not reach out?" Ekin Corlo said, extending her open palm before me, "and take either good luck or bad luck into your hand?" Her palm turned, closing into a fist upon the empty air. Then she turned her fist back and opened her palm again, this time revealing a tiny amulet carved of black stone. So she opened her hand, and there's a tiny little black stone in her palm. I gasped, surprised. Leaning closer, I saw the small figure of a galloping horse carrying a person upon its back. Before my eyes, gnarled fingers closed, one by one, over the amulet, and when they opened once more, Ekin Corlo's palm was empty. Udbal giggled. "Oyuna, my grandchild," Ekin Corlo continued, "many years ago the horse crushed your leg. Bad luck, people say, and they pity you. But I say this brought you good luck. I say that this horse claimed you as its own, that by crushing your leg, or the horse that horse crushed called you as his own. By crushing your leg, it freed you from the ground and invited you upon its back to travel with the wind. It is no surprise, then, that the white mare spoke to you." I sat silent, my jaw still dropping open. "The white mare has spoken to you," my grandmother continued, "because she knew you would hear, and you must listen. Do you think because you walk upon 2 legs and animals must crawl upon 4 that you are smarter or braver?" In the small gear's smoky air, Ekin Corlo's round, wrinkled face seemed to float closer. I found myself focusing on a toothless mouth spilling forth wise words. "Every living thing that has a talent for which it was created," it said. "And as you have discovered, Oyuna, every living thing has a voice. Did you not hear the earth spirits within the stream when you thought you were listening to us? A shiver slithered down my spine. You must learn to listen with your heart instead of your ears, and see with your mind instead of your eyes, for the water's surface hides the fishes that swim below it. Ekin Corlo sat staring at me, and through me her eyes looked into mine, smiling. Then she straightened, settled her shoulders back, and said, "Now eat." Udbal's hand flashed toward the cooking pot, the gnarled fingers emerging with a chunk of pale meat, which they stuffed into her mouth. Toothless gums chewed and chewed as a brown drool trickled down her chin. Ekin Corlo politely nodded toward me. Hesitantly, I reached into the pot, found a small piece of meat, and first swallowing hard, fearful of what strange carcass it may have come from, placed it in my mouth. It was mutton, and much tastier than my own bland recipes. Smiling and nodded, I reached in again, but this time Udbal's claws grabbed my hand, holding it over the pot while the meat's juices ran down my wrist. Wide-eyed, I looked over at my grandmother, but although a smile lit her face, her eyes were closed. Udbal turned my palm upward and pressed her face close to it. A yellowed claw on her other hand drew a trail through the grease, prodded at the fleshly mounds. Then she looked into the fire, and for the first time I noticed the shoulder blades of a sheep burning white within its flames. Udbal, grunting, studied the cracks crisscrossing across the hot bones. "Is it so?" spoke my grandmother, opening her eyes. "It is so," Udbal giggled. "Two lines, two shadows. It is so." My grandmother spoke in a deep voice, her vacant eyes staring at a place above my head. "Your journey with the white mare is long. Your hands bring change." I don't know if I truly heard my father calling me then, but jumping up, I shouted, "Coming, father!" And stumbling over legs and pots and pelts and bundles, I shoved my way through the door flap and bolted into the clear, frosty air of night. No indecision in my tracks this time. The cold light of the rising moon showed them heading straight for home. And that's the end of chapter 9. And so I'd like you to answer this question for me. Why does father warn Oyuna to avoid her mother's mother? So answer that in a question to me and an answer to me. Please make sure it is complete sentences. Sorry, I like complete sentences and at least one sentence.